Welcome once again to our online worship. It's great to share with you wherever you may be and whatever day you're actually watching this on. I guess most of you do watch on a Sunday, but I imagine one or two look in at other days of the week. But whatever you're doing, wherever you are, you're very welcome. And it's true to say that wherever we are, God is with us. We're thinking more about prayer this week, but in a slightly different way. We're thinking of that incident in the life of Elijah, the great Old Testament prophet, when he sat outside a cave that he'd run away to get away from things, and listened out for God's voice. And of course, as many of us know, he heard God's voice in the stillness, the still, small voice. And that's a different way of thinking about prayer, that still, small voice, listening for God rather than speaking. So that's our focus for today. But let's sing, shall we? We're going to sing a great song, a song that reminds us of God's faithfulness to us, and it's What a Faithful God. It's good to share in fellowship on a Sunday with our Zoom coffee time. A number of us share in that way, but it is open to all. So if you know how to access the Zoom fellowship time, you can just go on to Facebook to find the details of how to do that. Just come along and just share in the fellowship. There's nothing serious happens. It's just a time for us to share. And last week, as we shared, Gary Mitchell shared a video with us, which was from a couple of years ago when the songsters went down to Morriston to share with the songsters down there in their celebration of the songsters. I think it was a 75th anniversary. But at the end of that evening, there was a finale where the band played the march celebration and the songsters sang the refrain at the end. And there were, if you know that piece of music, it's all about, we'll keep the old flag flying, and somebody was waving a flag behind the songsters, and during the middle of the last refrain, the flag slid down the pole. Now, I know that wasn't meant to be prophetic, and I'm pretty sure it's not prophetic, but it was very funny. And if you get a chance to look at that video on YouTube, please do so. It is rather amusing. But the rest of the evening was wonderful, and our songsters took part, and we sang in a massed songsters as well. And here from that massed songsters is the song I Know a Fount. It's a favourite of many, beautiful setting, and I hope you enjoy and are blessed as you listen to the massed songsters of Clydebank, Morriston and Bristol Eastern singing I Know a Fount.
I know
Normally at this time of year we would introduce the self-denial appeal for the year. This is an opportunity for people associated with the Salvation Army to give financially, and that money goes towards the work of the Salvation Army around the world. And the UK territory of the Salvation Army is typically very generous in its giving. And this year that appeal will go ahead. Normally we play videos during our morning meetings to illustrate the work that we're going to support. This year those videos are a look back, if you like, on some of the countries and expressions of the Salvation Army that we've supported in previous years. But our giving is just as important this year. That money is still needed. Those expressions of the Salvation Army still need that financial support. So we're going to be playing a different video as part of our online worship in the build-up to our self-denial altar service. Now that's going to be slightly different this year, obviously, because we're not meeting together, but we are encouraging you to give. We will let you know how you can give in coming weeks once we've worked out the best way or ways that you can do so. But we do encourage you to prayerfully consider your giving this year. We are usually very generous at Bristol Eastern Salvation Army, and we're hoping and praying that you can continue to be generous even during this difficult time. So we invite you to now watch the first of our self-denial videos.
Hello and welcome to the first of our films for this year's Self-Denial Appeal. My name is Ben Cottrell, and as we live through the various lockdown measures in place across our territory, I'm going to be looking beyond our borders. For this year's Self-Denial Appeal, I'm going to focus on some of the places we've featured in previous appeals and catch up with people we've met along the way to find out how they've been coping during the pandemic. But first, let's look at last year's appeal. Last year we travelled to the city of Ouagadougou in Burkina Faso. We met Andre and Nana Togo and saw some of the amazing things that they're doing there. We saw a thriving corps full of enthusiastic new soldiers, and we saw how the Salvation Army is supporting people in the local community. You gave generously once again. Thank you so much. Your self-denial money is already being put to good use. And as a little reminder about how self-denial works, here's Ashley Bowles, who presented our films a couple of years ago.
The money you gave through self-denial is used to support the mission of the Salvation Army around the world, including our mission partners. The idea of self-denial was first introduced in London by William Booth in 1886. He said, "Go without something and give what you would have spent to the Salvation Army's work." That was over 130 years ago. Now, nearly every Salvation Army corps the world over plays its part. So if you are giving in London, Llanelli, Larne or Lockerbie, you are joining with Salvationists in Oslo, Ohio or Ouagadougou, which is the capital city of Burkina Faso. The money is redistributed by international headquarters to the places that need it most. It funds the background things, the not so exciting but essential things, so that Salvation Army staff and volunteers can get on and do what they're good at, like the work in Burkina Faso.
Well, as Ashley has reminded us, some of the self-denial money you raised goes to our mission partners, but quite a lot goes to other mission support work all over the globe. Mission support was crucial in enabling the work in Burkina Faso as the seedling Salvation Army took root and began to flourish. For over a year, I've had the privilege of working for the International Development Team at Territorial Headquarters. It's given me a further insight into the international work of the Salvation Army, and I've been involved in some of the projects which have been funded by self-denial. I live here at William Booth College with my wife Rebecca and our 2 children. And in a few weeks' time we'll be moving to a corps in East London. But this time last year, we were waiting for visas to go and work in Pakistan. Like so many other people around the world, our plans were disrupted by the global pandemic. Of course, lots of people have faced real hardship, and while it's been frustrating for us, we are well and healthy, so we are grateful for that. As we adjust to this change for us, and as we think about self-denial, I want to find out about how the Salvation Army around the world has adapted. So for the next 5 weeks, we'll be revisiting some of the places we've been to before. I'll be asking people how they're coping and what life is like where they are. I'll be talking to Fawzia Columbus in Pakistan. She featured in 2016 when Kerry Coke visited the Salvation Army's territorial headquarters in Lahore. I'll be talking to Melinda Boone from the Philippines. Melinda features in the Salvation Army's Helping Hand Appeal films from last year. She works in anti-human trafficking. I'll be talking to Richard Bradbury. Richard and his wife Heidi have been serving in Bangladesh for the last 2.5 years. They're there with their 2 children and work at headquarters in Dhaka, the country's capital. But next week, we'll pick up where we left off last year. I'll be talking to Nana Togo, who we saw in Burkina Faso. I'll look forward to seeing you then.
We're going to hear from the Sing Company now, and again from a meeting about 2 years ago, a song which I don't really know the exact title of, but I listened through, and it's a beautiful song, and the words expressed that need, not just in children, but in all of us, to learn more, to find out more about our faith, about who we are in Christ. I thought it was a delightful song, and I hope you enjoy listening to it and get a blessing from the Sing Company.
Ahab reported to Jezebel everything that Elijah had done, including the massacre of the prophets. Jezebel immediately sent a messenger to Elijah with her threat. "The gods will get you for this, and I'll get even with you. By this time tomorrow, you'll be as dead as any one of those prophets." When Elijah saw how things were, he ran for dear life to Beersheba, far in the south of Judah. He left his young servant there and then went on into the desert another day's journey. He came to a lone broom bush and collapsed in its shade, wanting in the worst way to be done with it all, to just die. Enough of this, God. Take my life. I'm ready to join my ancestors in the grave. Exhausted, he fell asleep under the lone broom bush. Suddenly, an angel shook him awake and said, "Get up and eat." He looked around and, to his surprise, right by his head were a loaf of bread baked on some coals and a jug of water. He ate the meal and went back to sleep. The angel of God came back, shook him awake again, and said, "Get up and eat some more. You've got a long journey ahead of you." He got up, ate and drank his fill, and set out. Nourished by that meal, he walked 40 days and nights, all the way to the mountain of God, to Horeb. When he got there, he crawled into a cave and went to sleep. Then the word of God came to him. "So Elijah, what are you doing here?" "I've been working my heart out for the God of the angel armies," said Elijah. "The people of Israel have abandoned your covenant, destroyed the places of worship, and murdered your prophets. I'm the only one left, and now they're trying to kill me." Then he was told, "Go, stand on the mountain at attention before God. God will pass by." A hurricane wind ripped through the mountains and shattered the rocks before God. But God wasn't to be found in the wind. After the wind, an earthquake. But God wasn't in the earthquake. And after the earthquake, fire. But God wasn't in the fire. And after the fire, a gentle and quiet whisper. When Elijah heard the quiet voice, he muffled his face with his great cloak, went to the mouth of the cave, and stood there. A quiet voice asked, "So Elijah, now tell me, what are you doing here?" Elijah said it again. "I've been working my heart out for God, the God of the angel armies, because the people of Israel have abandoned your covenant, destroyed your places of worship, and murdered your prophets. I'm the only one left, and now they're trying to kill me." God said, "Go back the way you came through the desert to Damascus. When you get there, anoint Hazael, make him king over Aram. Then anoint Jehu, son of Nimshi, make him king over Israel. Finally, anoint Elisha, son of Shaphat, from Abel-Meholah, to succeed you as prophet. Anyone who escapes death by Hazael will be killed by Jehu, and anyone who escapes death by Jehu will be killed by Elisha. Meanwhile, I'm preserving for myself 7,000 souls, the knees that haven't bowed to the god Baal, the mouths that haven't kissed his image." Elijah went straight out and found Elisha, son of Shaphat, in a field where there were 12 pairs of yoked oxen at work plowing. Elisha was in charge of the 12th pair. Elijah went up to him and threw his cloak over him. Elisha deserted the oxen, ran after Elijah, and said, "Please, let me kiss my father and mother goodbye. Then I'll follow you." "Go ahead," said Elijah, "but mind you, don't forget what I've just done to you." So Elisha left. He took his yoke of oxen and butchered them. He made a fire with the plow and tackle, and then boiled the meat, a true farewell meal for the family. Then he left and followed Elijah, becoming his right-hand man.
It's time to sing once again, and we're going to sing familiar words, Amazing Grace, but in this particular version there's an added chorus which says, "My chains are gone." Hope you enjoy singing Amazing Grace.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now am found, was blind, but now I see. 'Twas grace that taught my heart to flee, and grace my fears relieved. How precious did that grace appear, the hour I first believed. My chains are gone, I've been set free. My God, my Savior,
We're going to hear some band music now, and this week we're moving away from our own Bristol Eastern Band and moving across the Atlantic to New York, and we're going to hear from the New York Staff Band. The New York Staff Band are one of the very few bands around the world that's managed to record live with all the players present in one room, and it's wonderful to see and to hear a band, some musicians playing together rather than virtually. And this was a concert they put together about a month ago, which they placed online. And from that concert is a beautiful piece of music called This I Know. I'm going to let the bandmaster of the New York Staff Band introduce the piece to you, and then we'll listen as the piece plays.
In a moment, we will feature more beautiful music, this time from William Himes and his selection, This I Know. This piece starts with a quote from an old favorite and friend, James Anderson's Jesus Loves Me, and unfolds into a beautiful setting of Jesus is the sweetest name I know. Jesus is the sweetest name I know, and he's just the same as his lovely name, and that's the reason why I love him so. Oh, Jesus is the sweetest name I know. This is This I Know by William Himes.
I was talking with somebody the other day about how odd it is doing online sermons, because at the moment I get no feedback, which is perhaps why I'm not told too many funny stories in my sermons, which is something I normally like to do. So I'm going to tell one now, and I expect you all to be laughing at home. I'm told that a man went to the doctor complaining of a number of pains. After examining him, the doctor said, "I can't find anything physically wrong with you, but sometimes physical problems are the result of worry or stress. Maybe you need to find a good counsellor and tell him your troubles. He or she might be able to advise you and make you feel better." In fact, the man said, "Last week I had a man who was complaining of pain similar to yours, and I couldn't find anything wrong with him either. But after talking a while, he told me that he was worried sick about a £5,000 debt he owed and he couldn't pay. Well, we talked about it, and I was able to help him." The man asked the doctor, "How did you help him?" "Oh, I told him that life was too short to worry about a piece of paper that said he owed £5,000. I suggested that he tear up the paper and throw it away and stop worrying about the debt and get on with his life. And so that's what he did. And now he feels great." "Yes, I know," said the man. "I'm the one he owes the £5,000 to." As I said, I hope you're chuckling away at home. If not, I'll be very upset. Stress. Well, perhaps it's one of the biggest causes of absence from work there is. There are very few lucky individuals who don't suffer from stress or worry and who sail through life without a care. But they tend to be people, I guess, who have little, if nothing, to worry about, or they simply don't care about things. So they're very rare, they're very exceptional. Worry, fear about what will be, is perhaps one of the main reasons that we get stressed. Mental tiredness is a common factor these days. We hear it talked of often during the pandemic, and there are many reasons why the pandemic has led to an increase in problems with mental health. Elijah was a man, it seemed, who had reached a point where he was exhausted, and in fact, you would say he was depressed. This is in some ways unusual when we see what had taken place just before our reading, because on the face of it, Elijah had good reasons to be happy and pleased with his work, with his efforts for God. Elijah had held a very vital role. He was God's man in a seemingly godless land, a land that had turned away from God and God's ways, largely led by the king of the day. Judah had had some fairly awful kings, but Ahab was perhaps the worst of the lot, a man who was in the main influenced by his wife. It was ever thus, I guess. He had married Jezebel as part of a political alliance, and she had turned out to be a particularly nasty and manipulative woman. She'd persuaded the king that the nation should stop worship of the one true God, the God that had given the nation its name and makeup and history, and instead to turn to worshipping Baal or Baal. Worship which meant some fairly awful practices such as self-mutilation. Now, unfortunately, Ahab had gone along with her and had set up Baal as the nation's official state religion. And Elijah was the man sent by God to challenge the king, to prove that the one true God was a reality and not just a worthless myth like Baal. And this he had done. He had challenged the king's priests to a contest to see whose God could send fire onto an altar. And I'm sure we're familiar with the story. It had been an epic battle with Elijah ensuring a spectacular display, even pouring water all over the altar before God consumed it with fire. Elijah had been able to prove the power of God. One man taking on hundreds of Baal's priests. And he had, or rather God had, won the day. And then Elijah, in a further show of strength, had all the priests of Baal killed. It's a bit brutal, but a big symbolic victory in full view of the nation. And then, in order to see God fulfill his promise, he had run to the coast to see God end the drought that was happening in the land, as Elijah had told the king he would. So he had a lot to be pleased with. God had done everything he had said he would do. A great victory had been won. He, Elijah, had been shown to be God's man for that time and place. He was vindicated. The people had seen God at work through his servant Elijah. And yet we find him running away. He's utterly dejected. He's exhausted and he's afraid. There was definitely fear. They say hell has no fury like a woman scorned, and Jezebel wanted Elijah dead, and she vowed to kill him. And Elijah, perhaps understandably, had just had enough. It was time to leave, to take himself away. And so he flees into the desert, sits down under a tree, and he says to God, "Sorry, Lord, that's it. It's no more. I've had enough. Just take my life now, please. I don't want to go on." It's a curious thing, but true, just the same, that when things in life seem to be going well, when we have few worries or problems, when all our efforts seem to pay off and we see the results of our labours come to fruition, it's then that life can all of a sudden turn round and make us feel insecure. It's that inner voice telling us that really everything we're doing is just a waste of time and that things never really change. I was once told that depression tells you lies. And I think that is what was happening with Elijah. Despite all the things that he had just achieved, he felt that it was all useless. He believed that despite everything, no one else in the entire nation believed or wanted to follow God. And that Jezebel was still there in power, as bad and as mean as ever. And so he felt physically and mentally broken. He'd had enough. It shocks us when we realize that great men and women of God, seeming giants of resolve and will, go through periods of deep, dark depression. Winston Churchill, for instance, said, "Depression followed me around like a black dog all of my life." A young lawyer in the 1800s suffered such a deep depression that his friends did everything they could to keep all razors and knives away from him. He wrote these words, "I am now the most miserable man living. Whether I shall be better, I cannot tell. I awfully forebode I shall not." That lawyer later became the 16th President of the United States. His name was Abraham Lincoln. Charles Spurgeon, a great preacher of his day, was given to periods of depression. History tells us that there were times when Spurgeon would be so depressed that he would refuse to leave his home to go to church. On more than one occasion, his deacons had to come and physically carry their pastor into the pulpit. And as we find Elijah going through his crisis, his depression, it's worth noting just how God dealt with him. God speaks to him. In his dark times, God was there for him. And so an angel is sent to give Elijah the advice that Elijah needs, to tell him what Elijah needs to hear. And the first thing needed is for Elijah's physical needs to be dealt with. He was exhausted physically. After the spectacular display with the altar, he had run many miles to the coast. He walked everywhere. His recent efforts had left him drained physically. Our physical state and mental well-being are often closely tied together. It's important that when we become physically run down, that we take proper time to rest. William Booth, the founder of the Salvation Army, was an extremely hard-working man, often overworking. Just getting around would be physically tiring for him. But yes, even he would take time to rest, taking himself away to the coast for sabbaticals. God cannot use physically exhausted people. They're just no good to him. That's why the concept of the Sabbath is an instruction from God. God knows our limits. He knew Elijah's limits. He knew Elijah needed to take time to rest. He needed a fit and able Elijah. And so food and space was given to him for just that reason. There are times that we all need to rest. In these days of lockdown, when many of us are working from home, you may be forgiven for thinking that such things as physical demands are not relevant. But speaking as somebody who can spend many hours in front of a computer screen, I know that such work is still physically and mentally tiring. Just being at home is no excuse not to recognize our need for rest. And God gives us permission to rest. It's an important lesson to learn, one that we need to hear. God often deals in the practical things of life. This isn't an advocation of laziness, just that we take care of ourselves, and in so doing preserve our faith and relationship with God. Elijah needed something a little more though. He was still afraid. Even after his rest, he was still thinking he was alone. Thinking, listening to those voices that were saying he was a failure. He needed somebody to come alongside him and speak some words of reassurance. We all need that voice of reassurance, somebody who will hear us and will answer to us when we cry out to them. And so he travels again and he hides in a cave. But there's no hiding from God. God went with him to that cave and he was there to speak with him. In an amazing picture of how God can work, Elijah is asked to go outside the cave to wait for God because God was going to pass by. And he's not told the form that God will appear in. A mighty wind comes, it smashes the rocks, an earthquake comes, and then a fire. All mighty displays of nature, all shows of power and majesty, awesome forces at work. And perhaps Elijah and we might expect God to be present in such things, to show himself in such spectacular, supernatural ways. After all, when Elijah had the contest with the priest, God came in fire. He'd shown his power by ending the drought. To see God was to face death, the Jews believed. He was the mighty, powerful, creative force behind the universe. And yet, this was not how God appeared to him. This wasn't how God wanted to communicate with Elijah. Instead, he spoke in a whisper. Not a great show of power or might. Not a vengeful, proud God. But a God who whispers gently. Perhaps we too need to look for God to act in a similar way. We often think God needs to act in those mighty ways, especially when we feel down. We can ask, why do I feel like this, God? Why don't you do something? Change the situation. Sort out the pandemic. Where are you, God? And perhaps if we're not careful, we may actually miss the point that God has been there all along, speaking in the gentle whisper. God has much to say, things that he wants to show us. And the chances are that he will come along just when we need him most, just when we're at our lowest. It may be in something we read, something we hear from somebody else, God speaking through others. It may be a very clear and direct message. But I believe God, more often than not, speaks in the quietness. In that gentle whisper, he gave Elijah his next task and reassured him that he wasn't the only one left. God told him that there were 7,000 followers of God still to be found in the nation. Elijah had been through his crisis point, not necessarily his first or indeed his last, but God had seen his need, and a gentle, calm moving way, had gone through the crisis with him and had helped him to come out at the other end. Elijah, the great hero of the faith, prepared to do so much in the name of God, had shown his vulnerability. We too are vulnerable people so often. Life is such that we will all need to hear that still small voice speaking to us just when we need to hear it. I'd urge you to be prepared to listen, to take time out, to rest, and to lean more and more on the one who can bring us through to the other side. I don't know what the still small voice might have to say to you. That's between you and God. But if we don't take the time to listen for it, we may just miss that quiet message that God has for us. God will never pass by completely, I believe. But we may rush by in the other direction, too busy or too careworn to notice. Perhaps we need to find that metaphorical cave, to sit outside and to listen for the small voice of God. I pray that you find the voice for you in the quietness. God bless. Well, that's our worship done for another week, but of course each and every day can be an act of worship just wherever you find yourselves. And I hope that you spend time this week listening out for that still small voice. God will show up sometimes in the most surprising of places and situations. We're going to conclude with a great song, which is "Oh, for 1,000 tongues to sing." This is almost the opposite of the still small voice. We're going to go out with that great big bang. And so let's enjoy singing "Oh, for 1,000 tongues to sing." Have a great week, and may God bless each and every one of you.
Thank